But the way she said it, that low, even tone, like it was nothing and everything at the same time, hasn't left me since. It was a Tuesday, and I'd been living in the upstairs unit of her building for 3 weeks. The kind of place with peeling paint on the stair rail and a hallway that always smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and dust. I was still figuring out where everything was. Laundromat, bus stop, corner store. She ran the place herself, a converted old house that looked like it had seen better decades. I'd just come back from my shift at the repair shop, grease still under my nails. She was in the lobby when I came in, standing by the mailboxes in a crisp white blouse and dark slacks, hair pinned back, reading something in one of those slim notebooks she always carried. She looked up when the door clicked shut behind me. "Your blinds," she said, not looking at me long. "They're wide open. Anyone on the street can see right in. Close the curtains first." I half smiled, tried for casual. "Yeah? I didn't think anyone was watching." She paused just a second too long. Then, "People watch more than you think," and turned back to her notebook. I should have kept walking. Instead, I lingered stupidly. Thanks, I guess." Her pen hovered over the page. She didn't answer, just pressed her lips together. One quick, small curve, not quite a smile, and nodded once. I went upstairs, but I couldn't shake it. Something in that exchange felt heavier than it should have. Not flirty, not cold either. Just weighted, like there was more under her words. Later that evening, I found myself at my window, blinds open again, staring out at the streetlights flickering over the empty sidewalk. I thought about her saying people watch more than you think. Was she talking about neighbors? Random passers-by? Or, I closed the curtains finally, sat on the edge of the bed, trying to read, trying to ignore how quiet the room felt. Then I heard it, 3 soft knocks on the radiator pipe. She'd mentioned last week that she used them to signal tenants sometimes. Laundry done, packages delivered, whatever. But it still startled me. I opened my door to check. There she was, in the hallway, holding a brown envelope. "Mail for you," she said simply. Eyes on mine for half a beat too long before she handed it over. Her fingers brushed mine, barely. "Warm." "Thanks," I muttered. She didn't reply this time. Just turned, walked away, heels soft against the old wood floor. I watched her go, wondering why my chest felt tight over nothing more than an envelope and a sentence about curtains. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. The rain started sometime after noon, drumming on the old roof like impatient fingers. I'd been fixing the busted hinge on my kitchen cabinet when I heard her voice through the thin door. "You know how to use a screwdriver, right?" I opened it to find her standing there, arms crossed, raincoat half unzipped, damp hair clinging to her temples. "Pretty sure," I said, holding up the screwdriver in my hand. Her lips curved, barely. "Good." The basement doors sticking again. "Thought you might save me from wrestling it for another week." I followed her downstairs, the air cooler, smelling faintly of concrete and rust. She flicked on a dim bulb that hummed above us. The door in question sat crooked in its frame. She stood back while I knelt, examining the hinges. "Doesn't look too bad," I murmured. "You always this optimistic about broken things?" she asked. I glanced up. She was leaning against the wall, arms loose now, but her eyes were on the floor. Not teasing, just tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from a day's work, but from something that's been there a while. I wanted to ask if she was okay. Instead, I went back to the hinge. "Sometimes they're worth fixing," I said quietly. She didn't respond right away. When I risked a look, she was watching me. Studying, maybe. Then, as if catching herself, she shifted, tugged at her sleeve. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the rain and the occasional creak of the house settling. "You live here alone?" I asked, needing to fill it. Short, guarded, then softer, like she hadn't meant to say it aloud. "Used to be different." I tightened the last screw, stood, and wiped my hands on my jeans. There, I said. Shouldn't stick anymore. She stepped forward, tried the door, and it swung open smooth as anything. She smiled, small, fleeting, but real this time. Thank you, she said. And for a second I saw her differently. Not the confident landlady with crisp blouses and clipped words. Just a woman, grateful, maybe a little surprised. I shrugged, suddenly unsure what to do with my hands. Anytime. She held my gaze a moment too long. Then she looked away, tucked a loose strand of damp hair behind her ear. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't, and that silence felt louder than words. The storm hadn't let up all evening. Sheets of rain blurred the streetlights outside, turning the world beyond the windows into a shifting gray. The power had gone out an hour ago, and I'd been sitting upstairs in the dark, debating whether to just go to bed, when there was a knock at my door. Got candles, she said when I opened it, holding a small bundle of them and a lighter. Her hair was loose, falling around her shoulders in uneven waves. No makeup this time. She looked different, softer but also strangely unguarded. Thanks, I said, stepping aside. Come in. She hesitated, just for a moment before crossing the threshold. The apartment suddenly felt too small, the air thicker. I set one candle on the table, lit it, and the flame flickered shadows across her face. She glanced around, taking in the sparse furniture, the stack of repair manuals on the counter. Quiet up here, she murmured. Guess I'm not great at decorating, I said, trying for humor. She gave a short laugh, real but brief, and then sat at the table, fingers tracing the grain of the wood absently. I joined her. The rain filled the silence between us. Lived here long? I asked. 10 years, she said. Then, almost under her breath, feels longer. Something in the way she said it made me want to ask more. But before I could, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, face tightening just slightly. Everything okay? I asked. She locked the phone without answering. Old friend, she said finally. But her tone made it clear it wasn't someone she wanted to hear from. I didn't push. Instead, I slid one of the candles closer to her, noticing how her hands were still on the table, fingers curling unconsciously, like she was holding something in. Sorry, she said after a while, voice lower now. I didn't mean to bring that in here. It's fine, I said, and meant it. Her eyes met mine then, searching for something. I don't know what. The room felt too quiet, like even the rain had paused to listen. My chest tightened, not with impulse exactly, but with a pull I couldn't name. My hand twitched against the table. She noticed. I saw her glance at it, then back to me. Her lips parted like she was about to say something. Confess. Maybe. But then her phone buzzed again, and she flinched. The moment cracked. She looked away. You should go now, she said softly. My hand was halfway to hers when she said it. And I did. But only my body left that room. I hadn't seen her for 3 days. Not really. We'd passed in the hall once, her carrying groceries, me pretending to scroll my phone. But she didn't meet my eyes and I didn't try. It felt deliberate, like we'd silently agreed to step back from whatever had been circling between us. Tonight, though, the heater downstairs quit. I went to tell her. She opened her door before I knocked, as if she'd been listening for me. The heater? She asked. Yeah, it's dead. She nodded, grabbed a flashlight from the table behind her. Show me. We walked down to the basement in near silence. The air was cold, damp. She crouched by the old unit, tried the switch and sighed. It's always something with this place, she muttered, then stopped herself, pressing her lips together like she regretted saying it out loud. You've kept it running, I said quietly. She glanced at me. Someone has to. Something about the way she said it, flat, but not unfeeling, made me want to push. Why do you stay? She froze, one hand on the metal casing. What? Here. In this house. Alone. The words came out harsher than I meant. Her shoulders stiffened. That's not your concern. I should have backed off. Instead, feels like it is. She straightened slowly, turned to face me. The flashlight beam cut across her face, catching the dark circles under her eyes, the way her jaw clenched before she spoke. What are we doing? She asked, almost a whisper. The words hung there, sharp and raw. I didn't answer right away. Couldn't. Because I didn't know. Were we just two people in an old house, orbiting each other out of convenience? Or was there something else pulling us closer? Something neither of us wanted to name? I don't know, I said finally, voice low. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was seeing past my words, straight into the thing I wasn't saying. Her breath caught, barely audible, and she shook her head as if to clear it. We can't, she started, then trailed off. I stepped closer, not touching, but near enough to feel the faint heat of her body in the cold room. I'm not asking for anything, I said, but pretending nothing's happening. It's not working. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at me, lips parted, eyes shining with something I couldn't name. She didn't say anything, just looked at me, like she was already mourning something we never even had. It was late again, and I was coming up the stairs when I heard it, her voice, muffled through her door. Not talking, though. Singing. Soft. Almost like she didn't want anyone to hear. I stopped. Listened. The melody was fragile, barely holding itself together. Then it cut off suddenly, and a moment later the door opened. She froze when she saw me. Sorry, I said quickly. Didn't mean to. You didn't. Her tone was calm, but she didn't quite meet my eyes. The heater's fixed. Thought you'd want to know. Thanks. I should have kept walking, but something in her expression kept me there. Something brittle. You sing. Her mouth twitched like she almost smiled. Used to. Not anymore. Why'd you stop? She hesitated, fingers tightening around the edge of the door. Because the person I sang for isn't here to hear it anymore. I didn't know what to say to that. The hallway felt suddenly smaller, as if her words had taken up all the air. She stepped back, opened the door wider. Come in for a second. Inside, the room was tidy but lived in. A single framed photo sat on the desk. A man, maybe late 30s, laughing with his head tilted back. My husband, she said, following my gaze. Her voice was steady, but her hand trembled as she reached to straighten the frame. He's been gone 7 years. Car accident. I kept thinking I'd get over it, or past it, whatever people say. But, she stopped, exhaled sharply. Mostly I just learned how to live like I'm fine. I felt my chest tighten. Not pity exactly, just an ache. I'm sorry, I said, knowing how useless it sounded. She shook her head. Don't be. You didn't know him. For a moment, silence again. But not the cold kind. Something else. You remind me of him sometimes, she said suddenly, looking at me now. Not in how you look, just the way you listen. Like what I say matters. I didn't move, couldn't. Her eyes were clear and unguarded for the first time since I'd met her, and I felt the weight of that trust like a hand on my chest. She took a breath like she hadn't allowed herself to in years, and for the first time, she looked at me without fear. The first snow came that night, quiet and heavy, blanketing the street outside in white. I found myself downstairs, fixing the door frame that had started to warp from the damp. She came in without a word, carrying 2 mugs of tea. You're always fixing something, she said, setting one down beside me. Guess I like making broken things work again. I replied, and when I looked up, she was already watching me. We didn't talk after that. Not for a long while. Just the sound of the wind outside, the faint clink of ceramic when I picked up the mug. She sat across from me, shoulders less rigid than I'd ever seen them, eyes softer but thoughtful. like she was turning over a choice in her mind. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know what this is." I swallowed. "Me neither. But—" She paused, searching for words. "It doesn't feel wrong." Something in me loosened then, like I'd been holding my breath since the day I moved in. I nodded, unsure what to do with my hands until hers moved, slowly, deliberately, across the table. Not grabbing, just resting there, open. I laid my hand over hers. She didn't pull away, didn't speak, just closed her eyes briefly, like letting me in took more strength than she'd admit. We sat like that, the silence thick but no longer heavy, until she leaned forward, just enough that her forehead touched mine. No kiss, no promises, just that small, steady connection, as if to say I'm here. For now, that's enough. When she finally opened her eyes, there was no fear in them anymore, only acceptance. She didn't say she loved me, but she let her guard down, and that was louder than any "I love you" ever could be. Strange, looking back now, how something so small, close the curtains first, was the start of everything that mattered. I still live here, different unit now, on the ground floor. She doesn't own the building anymore. Sold it last spring. Said she was tired of holding up walls that weren't hers to hold. She teaches music again, small classes at the community center. I went once, stood in the doorway, and heard her laugh with a room full of kids. It was louder, freer, than I'd ever heard in that quiet old house. People ask sometimes how we started, like there's a moment you can point to, but I think it was more a slow unraveling. A guarded woman learning to trust again. A restless man learning that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about sitting in the dark with someone who doesn't have the words yet, and staying anyway. We've both changed. I'm steadier now, less afraid of silence. She's still layered, still has days when she pulls back into herself. But she lets me in piece by piece. And I've learned that's not a flaw. It's the most honest kind of love there is. Sometimes, on winter nights like this one, we'll sit on the couch with no TV, no noise, just her head resting against my shoulder. And I think about that first night, about the silence that felt like a wall between us. Now it feels like home. I don't need to tell her I love her every second. She knows. And when she reaches for my hand without looking, it's louder than any words. Maybe that's what love is. Really, not fireworks, not certainty, but showing up. Quietly. Again and again. If you've ever found something like that, something that grew when you weren't even sure you deserved it, you know what I mean? And if you haven't, maybe keep your curtains open a little longer. You never know who's out there watching more than you think.